Broadcasting live from the Zimmer Communications World Headquarters.
Great news for the American people.
This is Wake Up Mid-Missouri with Branden Rathert, featuring Stephanie Bell, News Director Brian Hauswirth, John Marsh, and Hannah, the producer.
This is why we listen to you.
Get ready, pal.
And now, here's your host, Branden Rathert.
Watch people think it's okay to bomb a hospital where children...
Rashida Tlaib lying yesterday in front of a whole bunch of folks. This has to do with the hospital bombing, and apparently she's thinking that it was Israel. And here's why she thinks that. Because the New York Times, the Associated Press ran with this stuff and some of the headlines trying to leave no doubt when there was a lot of doubt about this. And I bring this up yesterday. Brian Hansen, who is the star of the Gary Nolan Show, weekday mornings, 9 o'clock here on the radio station, Brian says to me, he says, man, did you see what the New York Times headline was? And I'm like, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I know. It's kind of old news, but apparently the new thing is definitive proof that it was not Israel, and people like Rashida Tlaib knowing it and then going at it and repeating these debunked claims. And I don't know who I fault more. And I would like to believe that Rashida Tlaib, she knew that it was false. And
she had to have known.
Yeah. And here's why I say that. It's not because I dislike her or dislike her politics or her personally because of what she believes and does, but because it's consistent with the other things that she has said. She has said, hey, Israel was attacked, I know, but they shouldn't be protecting themselves. They shouldn't be doing that. Jared Moskowitz, Democrat congressman, Florida, who, by the way, served in the military. He is on the Foreign Affairs Committee. He's slamming probably the media more than Rashida Tlaib. Tlaib wrote, your war and your destruction only approach, and this is to Biden, by the way, who is over in Israel, your war and your destruction only approach has opened my eyes, and many Palestinian Americans and Muslim Americans like me, we will remember where you stood. I think people will remember where Rashida Tlaib stood. So the White House and Biden, here I've spent the past since January 20th of 2021 talking about how much Joe Biden lies. And every day, most days we play his lies and highlight those. And it's not to pick on the guy. It's just to draw the line from point A to point B and why he's so dangerous for America. But Biden saying yesterday, yeah, this was not Israel. Now all of a sudden I believe the guy. Does that make me a hypocrite? Only when it's convenient, John.
A little wishy-washy there.
A little wishy-washy. Now Joe's telling the truth because it's something I agree with. Quick traffic note. Moberly area, apparently 63, a couple of texts that we are getting. Accident 63 headed south. So 63 headed south, apparently at a standstill, Route M. And Rennick, Route 63. So we're keeping an eye on that for you. So, yeah. So now all of a sudden, I'm putting some stock in what President Magoo says because he agrees with what I'm saying.
And he's addressing the nation tonight, I think. Are you going to watch?
I would like to. I'm going to be at a couple of big events in Jefferson City tonight.
A couple of big events.
Is that a humble brag?
Well, it's Stephanie's doing a thing, so I'm going there for that.
Yeah, we've got the annual YMCA auction supporting the local YMCA. That's going to be really exciting.
Yeah, and the YMCA.
That's a big deal. They do a great job.
It's a pretty big deal, and they've done some incredible work over the years. And then before that, Chamber Connections in Jefferson City is happening. So when I'm at this important event for Stephanie, I'll be over here on my phone just like I did at the Zonta event, going
making faces. And it's
I was
not
going to say that's not all you did at the Zonta event.
Mugging for the camera.
And it's not for me; it's for the YMCA. But I'm excited you're going to be able to attend. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't realize that actually the Southern Boone Y is part of that Jefferson City Y, and so I mean, just a huge project for Ashland community. Something that we didn't have before. And I mean, I drive by every morning. The place is packed. I'm like, people ask me, how do you wake up so early? And I'm like, what I get to do is fun. How do all those people who are at the gym at are really, really early in the morning, how do they do that every morning? But it's such a needed and an important resource for folks to stay healthy, and I've been really thankful for all the work of the YMCA.
And the YMCA in Ashland too. That's a very impressive facility. And what I like about that was it was a lot of community coming together to help make that happen. Welcome to the show, Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Brian Hauswirth.
It's good to see you.
There's John Marsh. Do we need to spend any time talking about the House Speaker thing?
I mean, we could just we could just replay what we said yesterday. I think I have heard
which House Speaker, U.S. or Missouri?
Right. We've heard more calls, I think, in the last 24 hours for this Patrick McHenry side plan of elevating him or giving him more power. But we heard from Mark Alford yesterday on our show that he is not in favor of that, and it didn't sound like it was really popular among his colleagues either. But
nobody's popular. Apparently.
They're running out of options.
It really is, and he was very frustrated, Alford, yesterday during the show, to the point where he said they look like idiots. I believe that's what he said. I mean that's pretty powerful, but
not too shabby for a freshman lawmaker. By the way, points.
No, exactly. The debate reminds me of Washington. There was a song, Stephanie may remember it. The song was called "Linger." Do you have to let it linger? It was from the Cranberries, and it was a great song. When I think of Dolores and the Cranberries singing the song, Do You Have to Let It Linger, I think of this speaker debate. It continues to go on and on and on, and it doesn't.
Are you thinking the same thing I'm thinking, Stephanie, because of the word linger?
No, I'm not.
It doesn't seem to. I mean, it
Just
doesn't.
Brian Hauswirth quoting the Cranberries wasn't on my bingo card for this morning.
I thought they were a great group, but they were very underrated, but without question. But when I think of that song, I think of what's going on in Washington. As far as the Speaker of the Missouri House, you referenced that, John.
Yeah.
There was a report, by the way, that his chief of staff is not there employed anymore, and apparently he's been hired by the Senate President Pro Tem of Columbia, based on reports out of Jeff City.
John, what do you know about this story regarding Dean Plocker?
Yeah, this is the deal where he said he fired his chief of staff, and that's Kenny Ross, who's been there, as Brian knows, for a long time. Yep. The last three speakers, Richardson and Elijah Haar and Rob Vescovo. And this is all with the allegations that have been floating around that were made by the chief clerk of the House of potentially illegal conduct by Plocker and his staff for wanting to spend almost $1 million on a private company to manage what was called constituent information. But it sounds like Caleb Rowden has now hired Kenny Ross for his team, correct?
That's absolutely correct. Based on Senator Rowden's tweets and also based on former Speaker Elijah Haar and Senator Travis Fitzwater's tweets, they're praising that. So that's all, John, that we really know about that at this point, about that. But Kenny Ross is employed now by the President Pro Tem.
And then Plocker, of course, running for lieutenant governor.
Yes.
Holly Rader also in that race. A little bit later this morning, we might look at campaign finance numbers. Does money in your in the campaign bank account, does that always mean victory? It
doesn't always mean victory. No money in your campaign account probably always means defeat.
Now, the National House Speaker.
Total number of votes cast is 432, of which the Honorable Jim Jordan of the state of Ohio has received 200 votes. The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 212 votes.
All right, well, good times. Joining me now, Republican Congressman from Florida, Carlos Jimenez.
I think it's a great explanation, and I know people are, well, you're standing on principles. And
what's the majority needed? 217, isn't it?
217, and a Democrat garnering more votes right now. Because before, so we know that, the votes, Scalise didn't have them, and Hakeem Jeffries was getting a good number of votes. Now Hakeem Jeffries is getting more votes than any Republican. And so my reaction is kind of like I just want to sit back and go, well done. Nicely done. Good work. Because people talk about principles. What about the principle of, doing the people's work and compromising sucks? I want what I want every time I want it, right? I do. And man, because of my ego, when I have to compromise, and I'm getting better at it. And I've learned a lot from it.
What?
Dude, come on. Give me some credit here. Steph, you too. Give me some credit here, man. But
what crickets?
I haven't known you for as long as Hannah has known you.
That's a good point. But, isn't there some principles into compromising sometimes, too? You don't always get everything that you want. I don't want to be wishy-washy here. I think Speaker of the House should be Marjorie Taylor Greene or Matt Gaetz. Put them up there.
No, thank you.
Why not? I'm kidding. It's a facetious question. Don't answer that.
Mark Alford.
You know, why not?
I mean,
Like,
why?
seriously?
Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they consider someone who like doesn't have all the baggage or the, you know? I mean, seriously.
Silly Stephanie, that's not how politics works.
I know, but at this point, I mean, pick someone who isn't necessarily
Beholding to everybody.
Yeah, and who's not necessarily got all these future ambitions and everything else right away, and just say, hey, look, we're just gonna pick this one person.
Joe Exotic.
In knowing that maybe he's not going to do it forever, but just like to get us through the next little bit.
Because in the budget, I wonder what happens there. And then who would be president of the United States? Let's say Joe dies in the next few days, and then for some reason Kamala dies. The president, the next in line, is Speaker of the House, right?
Mm-hmm.
So is it the bow-tied dude from, is it McHenry? Does he become president?
I think technically the speaker is vacant, so it would go over to the Senate.
Man. Mark says the speaker selection is going to hang around like a student loan.
I think they should just
Ouch.
rock, paper, scissors.
Why not? At this point, would
Getting
it make
to that stage, isn't it?
Seriously, not even trying to be funny. Why not? Just pick somebody. Get something done. Just pick somebody.
Back to the name of the former president who was much mentioned.
Why not?
Let's not pick him,
Speaking of student loans, have I whined enough about having to make my first loan payment?
You
Yes.
have not.
I'm getting conflicting answers here.
Go ahead.
Well, I had to make my first, student loan payment right after my wedding, which is fun timing. I had enrolled in the auto debit program where they're just supposed to pull it out of your bank account, and it didn't work.
Uh-oh.
So I was 2 days late on my first student loan payment.
Oh, no.
Well done. Nice.
I know.
Way to stick it to the government.
Right?
Aren't you trying to buy a car, too? You got to be those student loans will get your credit score.
I'm aware. I'm aware.
Anybody in the market for a car? I know you're in the market for a car.
I bought one last week.
Because one of the things I want to cover this morning, there's some interesting news regarding not electric vehicles. You want to buy an electric vehicle? Go ahead. That's cool. That's great. But when the government is in effect trying to funnel you, forcing you into buying one, it causes problems. GM and Ford are starting to see some problems. Some of the stories we're going to be covering this morning here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Getting ready for the daily DC Rundown 5 minutes from now.
We're learning more about our friend with all of his gold bars stuffed in his jacket.
That's coming up 5 minutes from now.
chamber to expel former Senate Foreign Relations Chairman Bob Menendez after a superseding indictment accused him of being a foreign agent of Egypt. A huge, huge concern on Capitol Hill.
Makes me wonder if on the Senate floor, folks are going, you know that Fetterman, he's a smart dude. We better pay attention to what he's saying. That's getting us into today's Daily DC Rundown with Stephanie Bell.
I mean, they never expelled Santos. I still kind of wonder how that guy survived with all the lies. But Fetterman is calling on them to expel Menendez. We are learning more. Not only, they amended the indictment. Originally, they indicted him, I think, for just taking all of the cash and the gold bars and the car and all this. And now they're actually, the amendment alleges that he was an agent of the Egyptian government. A bunch of people are named along with him. And so some of the co-defendants showed up yesterday and pled not guilty. That's including his poor wife named Nadine. She was apparently also in on it, or allegedly in on it.
And we're learning some interesting history. Apparently, she may have gotten some favoritism. I think she killed a dude in her car one time.
Oh, I did hear that.
Yeah, and the cops were like, we're not going to test you for DUI or anything. And remember, when he was on that Foreign Relations Committee, guess who else had that position back in the day? Senator Joe Biden. Guess who else has been accused of taking money from foreign governments through his son, Joe Biden? I think all of that is fascinating.
Yeah, this businessman who's also been charged, I guess, has an ankle bracelet, and he was whining to the judge yesterday because the ankle bracelet was uncomfortable, and the judge was like, no.
Being charged with a crime is hard.
Yeah, it was painful, and so he said he wasn't going to flee, and the judge was like, no, you're too connected to Egypt. You're going to keep the ankle bracelet on. So,
and I wonder what that's like, because you talk about George Santos and now Menendez. The thing that's happened with Santos facing some pretty serious charges. You got Menendez facing some really dark charges, I think. Like, what is that like around your colleagues? Besides what's happening in the national news, but you still showing up to work every day. I would think that's got to be almost lonely, because I'm guessing, and I don't know, I'm guessing like a lot of people ain't coming up, hey, George, how you doing today? You want to go? I'm guessing that doesn't happen.
Well, and remember in 2022 when people wouldn't even get on the same stage with Biden because they didn't want the photograph? I suspect people are like, there's a bubble. I don't even want to be photographed with this guy right now.
That dude was hiding gold bars in his closet and some clothes, man. Don't get photos with that dude.
It's not good. Well, at the same time, we're seeing the conflict in the Middle East. We are learning that Russia and North Korea are tightening their ties. The foreign ministers had met. The U.S. recently reported that North Korea had transferred weapons to Russia to boost its capabilities. The Russian foreign minister thanked North Korea for its strong support of Russia's war on Ukraine. So that's not great.
There's a story out of St. Louis that apparently folks that were hiring outside IT sources were inadvertently funding North Korea because it had to do with China. It's a story we're going to cover later. But again, we talk about why these things on a national scale matter. Man, it matters.
It really does. Well, and we know a lot of people who support Trump ended up arrested in the last couple of years. Another person who's a Trump supporter got arrested apparently yesterday. There was a lady in Trump's civil fraud trial, which we've seen some on the television. Apparently, she was a court system employee. She showed up. Some folks say she was yelling out from the back that she wanted to help Trump. Apparently, once they escorted her out of the courtroom, she was yelling and saying to the court officers, "You're scaring me. I have a right to be here. I'm a citizen. I'm a court employee. I'm just..."
he's the Kingdom City manager talking about the weed tax. Now, that was some time ago, but we bring that up because now there's some lawsuits, and this was a big thing even as weed, recreational weed, or let me be more politically correct. Apparently, folks that ingest the weed, they prefer that you call it cannabis. It's not weed, it's not pot, it's cannabis. I get it.
Whatever gets you to drop the word "the" from in front of it, I'm game for.
Anyhow, so now the issue is taxing. So, there's a state tax on it. Marijuana prices rose now October 1st. It was just a couple of weeks ago. New local taxes taking effect. Constitutional amendment that legalized recreational cannabis included 6% statewide tax, and it authorized local governments to charge a sales tax of up to 3%. But the question now is, okay, local governments, does that mean the city? Does it mean the county? In places that love their taxes, for example, Boone County, it means both. And that's an issue.
Same for Cole County as Jefferson City.
Yeah, and I think I don't know one political subdivision that didn't vote on this in the last year. I mean, and I think I think there might have been one in the entire state where it didn't pass, but I think almost every place it went on the ballot to be taxed, it passed. And so we talked about, like, here it might not be that big a deal, but in the article it's talking about someone in Florissant, and they're saying, hey, the regular tax rate would be 8.9 basically, and then you add the 3, and then you stack the 3 on top of it. Now you're looking at 15% on your marijuana, and people are obviously the stores are unhappy, and where you really see it, and I think
are the stores saying that the taxes are too high?
Well done.
Thank you.
But so here, I think we see less of a problem. But in St. Louis, a lot of these, you can drive across the line from the county to the city. Really, and some of these businesses are located rather closely. So if you've got someone, within a couple miles of you, and you've got 6% and they've got 3%, obviously that puts you at a disadvantage. And that's where these lawsuits, I think, are coming out of the city.
Well, look at Boone County and Cole County. I mean, there's already the 6% Missouri tax, and if the taxes stay stacked, what do you add up? It comes out like 18% taxes on it.
Oh yeah. Well, and I mean, I assume, I don't know people's habits, and I don't have a habit, so I assume you're not like buying marijuana every day, and so like I'm in Jefferson City and Columbia a lot, so I could just stock up when I'm in the one that is the better tax rate for me.
Call your friends. Hey, I'm at the weed store, but I'm at the one outside of the city limits. What y'all need? It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. There's Stephanie Bell. Good morning, Steph.
Good morning.
Producer Hannah.
Hello.
Mr. Marsh is here.
Yes, sir.
My name is Branden Rathert. This is interesting because I've asked people, because a lot of folks say, well, it was Jackson County and St. Louis City that passed legalized, and Boone County that passed legalized recreational weed. But there's almost like this dichotomy that I hear from people, because there's still a lot of mostly old school conservatives that just are still freaked out at the idea that weed is legal. And I think it's because people like me, I watched that movie Reefer Madness in the 8th grade on the old reel-to-reel in Mrs. Turner's class.
There it is.
Reefer Madness. And so all these people grew in, as a bunch of older lawmakers, too, that think, weed is evil and it's all this. And as a matter of fact, Randy Tobler hosts the Tobler Show weekdays, 4 o'clock here. We disagree about the weed thing. But it's interesting because there's a lot of the conservatives that I talk to that are like, well, it shouldn't be legal in the first place. But then they're also against any kind of more taxation. But these conservatives that hate the idea that weed is legal, they're all about taxing it more because they hate it. And I'm like, okay, I respect it, but how do you get your head around that? Lesser of two evils.
I remember when we talked when they were doing the whole vote, when it ended up on the ballot everywhere from Fulton to Ashland, like Steph said and all. And I remember, I think it was the city attorney in Jefferson City said, well, if the taxes come in, they could probably bring in $150,000 a year.
Oh, the revenue is insane. And of course, like what we know from what the state has told us already is the projections on just the sales and even from medical were way higher than they had originally anticipated. So I would think for some communities it could be pretty impactful.
You ever driven by one of the local dispensaries in the middle of the day?
Oh my gosh. So when it first went online back in February, and it got into March, like I would notice, and it's not just the cars in the drive-through that were stacked up. You'd think like it was a coffee place or something on a Sunday morning. Those lines are constantly packed. And here's the other thing. I stereotype sometimes because it works a lot of times. But the cars and the people I would see in the cars, they're not what I would, stereotype as people who ingest recreational weed. I'm like,
no Volkswagen buses in the in the drive-through. Huh?
No, I'm talking like really nice SUVs and cars and, professional-looking people. And I've often wondered, like, is it people that, because I don't think this has happened, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but people that never smoked it just because, or never ingested it, that never did it, and you would say, how come? Well, because it's illegal. That's why I've never done it. And those people, now that it's legal, they're going, I'm going to give this a try. Or is it people, hey, they putzed around when they were on campus for a little bit, getting high, and that was fun. And then all of a sudden, they grew up, they got married, started paying off student loans and buying cars and being responsible adults and thought, weed does not fit into this lifestyle. I'm going to quit.
You see a lot of older folks in the drive-through lines, too.
Yeah, that's I find it fascinating. Tom says via text 874-9390, and then nobody can figure out why there is still a black market for it. Because if the taxes, as Hannah says, the tax is too damn high and it makes the weed cost too high, then why not? And I don't know if it's cheaper on the streets. I don't know. Can you even buy it on the street? Is that something now that it's legal?
You look at me like I'm the last person to ask.
He meant in Ashland specifically, I think is what he was getting.
Yeah, probably in the room, you're the last person. It's a tie between you and Hannah, I think. Of course, Hannah's young. She just got off a college campus a couple of years ago. But yeah, you two would be the last in the room.
But I would say, it is not who a lot of people would expect. I've seen it on the golf course. I've seen it among, people my age and moms.
Where else have we seen it? And smelled
at the parade.
At the parade last
You guys need to stop.
But I think, but I think the tax, thing, and then the question is who wins, right? Like, does the county get it or does the city get it? Right now, the lawsuit is saying the city, if you're in an incorporated city where the county and the city has passed it, then the city would, I think, take the tax for any incorporated areas. And I think the idea, too, was that, I think in my mind on the local side, the idea was, maybe the mayor, and what we've heard from our local law enforcement officers was it wasn't a big deal, but that potentially there could be, more cost for enforcement, and, they've got to monitor something now that they weren't monitoring before. So, hey, here's, you can put in this tax and it might help you for, some local governments who are having to permit or, work through the opening of these new businesses, it can help offset those costs. But I
think Columbia said with their tax, if I recall, back when the Columbia voters voted on it, they said it would be earmarked for expungement of folks with marijuana convictions.
A couple of months ago, John Marsh and I, we were judges for the big rib cook-off in Jefferson City, and I spoke with Lieutenant Dave Williams. When I get a chance, I'd like to ask folks in local law enforcement, hey, now that weed has been legal, now that cannabis has been legal.
There you go.
Thank you. Now that cannabis has been legal, are you seeing problems, as far as driving under the influence, things like that? And the answer I consistently get is it's the only problems we're seeing is with people it was problems with before. So in other words,
and people behind the wheel. We heard from a retired law enforcement officer said when he was riding his motorcycle recently, every car he passed smelled like a pot farm as he drove by.
Are you guys mentally preparing yourself for Saturday's parade? Or are you going to be caught off guard again?
Stephanie, somebody's smoking marijuana. Gosh dang it.
On a college campus.
And it's legal, even though you're not supposed to be doing it.
And the guys from 315 have been hanging out with us at our Tiger Tailgate.
Yeah, they have.
Get your free passes for the Tiger Tailgate. You can go to places like a whole bunch of places around Mid-Mo you can go. You can go to 315 Primo Cannabis, actually. Good Day Farm, both in Columbia. In Jefferson, those places you go in Columbia. You can go to Von Pools and Spas in Jefferson City. Also, Lutz's Barbecue. And then in Lynn, you can go to Casper's. People like Hy-Vee, Echo Water Systems, Twain Barbecue and Tap Room, Buffalo Wild Wings, Bud Light, and High Noon, all helping us out 2 hours prior to kickoff of a sold-out homecoming game. We're going to feed you and drink you. Should be a really, really good time.
Well, and we can't get off the topic of marijuana without saying that the state tax goes to veterans. And so far since 2019, I think the state has sent approximately, $100 million. And this article is was in May of 2023. So a lot of money going to veterans programs from the state tax and from the legalization.
Jack Cardetti is quoted by the Missouri Independent. He's a spokesman for one of the groups that recommends, I think it's the Missouri Cannabis Trade Association. Missourians are spending about $100 million a month. $100 million a month on recreational weed.
That sounds like the price of it's kind of inflated when you start crunching the numbers.
It is. Okay, and I think I should fact check myself. I think we've raised $100 million in taxes, but I think it's split. So they do pay the operational costs at DHSS. So I think maybe $30 million officially has gone to the Veterans Commission, but they pay for the operations, and then I think they're sweeping more over. But obviously so far. I'm fact checking myself. $27 million to support veterans, a total of $100 million raised. But $27 million is huge. And we talked to folks like our local rep, State Representative Dave Griffith, and all the programs that I'm sure he would like to fund. That this will be helping going forward.
Group of local veterans went down. There's a big a replica of the wall in Perryville. And it's a dude's private farm. As a matter of fact, I get to have I had lunch in producer Hannah's hometown.
And you ran into some folks that I know.
So here's the number one. I'm hanging out in producer Hannah's hometown. Yes, they're having lunch with some veterans. I walk into this So again, and I'll go hypocritical here.
Boonville always gets the cheap gas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm jealous.
It is going down. But if we blame Biden, and we can still blame directly at the feet of Biden for gas being so expensive. But then when it goes down, we say, well, that's Biden too. Nope. Coming up, as a matter of fact, man, shame on the media. Disheartening and dangerous, their reports about this Israel bombing this hospital in Gaza. The White House and Biden is saying that is simply not true, but people like Rashida Tlaib running with it. And I'm sure you know by now we still have no Speaker of the House. Matter of fact, one Republican on Fox last night saying Hakeem Jeffries, not only is he coming in, he was coming in second place. He got more votes. Hakeem Jeffries got more votes than Jim Jordan. I don't think Hakeem Jeffries is going to be elected Speaker of the House. But I also didn't think we would be here where we are now. And apparently there is some consensus that Jim Jordan will get even fewer votes.
We talk about how polls, show some momentum. And the consensus was if he picks up a couple votes, then we're moving in the right direction. And yesterday we were definitely moving in the wrong direction.
Going down, just like gas prices. Stephanie Bell, producer Hannah, I am Branden Rathert. Yesterday we got to have some, it's a group of guys, they call themselves the Dirty Half Dozen. And that's in reference, there's an old movie, I think Lee Marvin was in it, called The Dirty Dozen. But these guys are veterans. They served our country very well, Vietnam. We've met them through the Central Missouri Honor Flight, which Wake Up Mid-Missouri, huge supporters of. Zimmer Radio Group, big supporters of what these folks do. And once in a while, they go out and they have lunch every month. And once in a while, they invite me to tag along. And yesterday, they said, we're going to go to the Round Table in Centralia. Centralia, producer Hannah's hometown. So I walked into the restaurant yesterday, and the thing that I heard was, hey, and I could see people were kind of looking at me. So two things happened. Number one, I ran into producer Hannah's grandma, one of her grandmas, who I got to meet Saturday at Hannah's wedding. By the way, Hannah's posted pictures of her wedding on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page.
Yeah, we got sneak peeks back from the photographer yesterday.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
No, the photographer did a beautiful. No, they say the photographer did it. They are stunning. If you have not seen those yet, please check out Dear Sweet Hannah on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page. Met her grandma, and I told her, I could party with this woman. She is cool. I see where producer Hannah gets it from, and Hannah's mom is really cool, too. Y'all are just alike, and it's really, really cool. But so I'm talking to them, and here's the thing that I heard. People going, hey, are you the guy that works with producer Hannah?
Whatever.
That's what happened.
Whatever.
In Centralia yesterday. Closing the checkbook on universities over anti-Semitism. We're going to cover that a little bit after 7 o'clock. And being in the limelight is not always cool. In other words, being these celebrities, everybody thinks being a celebrity is really cool. And it's not always, I would guess.
I don't think it always is. Well, Travis Kelce apparently lives in a regular old neighborhood, a nice house, but not a gated community, and people have kind of been stalking him and on Taylor watch in his neighborhood. And apparently I've heard that his neighbors don't really appreciate that. And he certainly doesn't appreciate that. And now being in the limelight, apparently he decided, you know what, I'm just going to go buy a mansion for a little bit of privacy. So yesterday, and I was trying to fact check this because I'm like, no, he didn't do it. He didn't have a girlfriend for a month and buy a $6 million mansion just to get away. And TMZ is saying that he did. His new mansion has a mini golf course and a waterfall and a swimming
Work. This could not come at a worse time for the Republican Party, by the way, because Joe Biden, he's getting all kinds of press right now. People love a wartime president. I get we are not in war, but there is war going on. President getting all kinds of press right now. President going to be on TV 7 o'clock our time tonight. This is really, really bad, I think, for the Republican Party. Regardless of who you think should be the House Speaker, there cannot be anybody that's going, hey, this is a good thing right now. And I get the whole principles. You know what else is principled? Working for the American people. You know what else is principled? Is sometimes even having a compromise, I think, on things that, you don't want. Things that you find are distasteful.
Going to start making you put $1 in the jar every time you say the word principle.
Principles. Well, it's hard. And I go back to... I dropped my health care insurance whenever the Obamacare came into effect because I was principled. And I paid for it, and I knew I was going to pay for it. But I was willing to pay that price.
Was the price more than you expected it to be?
No. I knew exactly what it was because I had done the math beforehand. I knew it was going to be a $600 fine per year. Then I knew that there were going to be there's going to be charges, there's going to be interest and all that. It was pretty much right exactly.
Was there a deal where if you saved your receipts, you could get a refund?
I want to poll people to see who actually is still, who saved your gas receipts last year? Are you still saving this year? Are people just like, forget it at this point? Or is anybody still sticking with it?
Yeah.
Well, and yeah, I don't think anyone's sticking with it. But on the speaker thing,
you don't think anyone is sticking with it?
Not a lot of people.
Yeah, I know several people that are smart people that are doing it.
Okay,
I'm kidding. Well, here's the thing about the gas people, and this is the other thing. People go, I can't believe they did this. Well, you can get your money back. Well, I know, but it's too hard. Okay.
Yeah, I think on the speaker thing, back to the speaker thing, I think you lose credibility if you go to the mat on everything. I mean, you kind of got to decide, what you're going to go to the mat for. And I would rather you go to the mat on a policy issue, on something that I really care about, and so if you're just that guy, and we've seen this, or gal, usually it's a guy, I'll just say that.
No, I agree. I agree. We men are so egotistical, and that's why I think sometimes there's benefit to having more chicks in politics.
Who's just like, no, or always the most extreme position on everything. Then when it really matters, can we trust you that it really matters to you, or that you're just holding out? And I think, again, I don't like to compromise more, I wouldn't say necessarily, but are we going to, do ourselves, a disservice? What we heard at the polling, the American people are now blaming Republicans for the chaos. And I think initially, there was a lot of, we're no longer talking about Hunter Biden. We're no longer doing the investigations. We're no longer talking about Menendez. We're no longer talking about, foreign influence. We're no longer talking about, gas prices or the economy or all this. We're all talking about the speakership, and that Democrats love that. And so by compromising, are we putting ourselves, or by not compromising, are we putting ourselves in a worse place than we would be if we could just, elect somebody, get these investigations going, and move on? I think that is the true conservative position.
Yeah, and it's frustrating. Angela, I'm saving my gas receipts. Jeff, One Stop Office Supplies. I turned in my gas receipts, almost $100 this year. Tanner Chemna Collision. I like what Tanner's. Did you see Tanner's text?
Yeah, he says, I'm petty enough to stick with it.
I
love that.
That's pretty good. I like that. Nathan, who serves our country, saving my receipts this year. 874-9390, 874-9390. John says, don't hear you complaining about the 22 that voted with Democrats yesterday. Well, because I haven't gotten there yet, John. But thank you for bringing that up. Hakeem Jeffries, by the way, so he had been coming in second place in the House race. And now, not only is he's coming in first. And we know recent history tells us, right, that people like Matt Gaetz have voted with Republicans. That's a fact. Other Republicans have voted with Democrats. Hakeem Jeffries, he's coming like this close. I don't think it will happen in a heartbeat. John, do appreciate the text, 874-9390. Sandy says via text, exactly, Steph. she agrees with you.
We did have a female. You bring up a very interesting point about Hakeem Jeffries. He has come very close. We did have a female speaker of the Missouri House back in 2003 that some people, I covered her. Her name was Catherine Hanaway. You probably remember.
Oh, yeah.
Very well known even today, a prominent lawyer and former U.S. attorney, as a matter of fact. But she was, I'll tell you, she was a pretty powerful speaker. There is no doubt. She commanded respect. And she also was one that she was the first speaker that I remember, a Republican, letting the legislature and having them take the day off for MLK Day. They had always gone in on session that day. She felt like they shouldn't do it. She did that, and the Black Caucus praised her for that. But really haven't been anyone else in the Missouri legislature that I can even recall right off the top of my head. I mean, some have been in leadership, but certainly not even running for speaker that I.
Well, you talk about Catherine Hanaway, Brian. Remember the throwdown she had with Bob Holden over tax increases?
Yes, they gave competing speeches during there were three separate back-to-back speeches in 2001 over corporate tax loopholes. And people were screaming in the audience. It was really, really. That
was when Catherine Hanaway, and I'm paraphrasing, that was when she said something to the effect to, Governor, what part of no don't you understand?
Yeah, but he kept coming back at it, though. He really did.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think our state would be in a much better place if we had more women in leadership. But that's beside my point. But when I was talking about guys, and they're mostly guys, I'm talking about the ones who refuse to compromise and who cause all of the problems. And if you usually that is a guy.
Usually the older ones.
Usually that's been a guy. And I would say also, I think it was 2 years ago, and Brian, you'll remember this, they actually, like the women all got together and there were articles saying like the Senate women, told the men to knock it off and to move on, and they came together and said, look, we've got to get something done here. And so again, I think if we had more, and we do have some rising leaders. We look at people like Holly Rader, like Cindy O'Loughlin, and so I like seeing them move up, and I think they've really made a difference in that Missouri Senate. Although sometimes with one person holding out or a couple, it can be really difficult.
One of our former Wake Up Mid-Missouri family members, Laura Nauser, who spent 12 years in local politics, Columbia City Council, I would tell her all the time, and I really do believe more women in politics could be helpful, and she say no. As somebody who'd served in politics for 12 years.
How soon we forget Nancy Pelosi.
And then there's that. And why is that? I mean, because men, we are, I believe, more egotistical, more prideful than women can be. Like, because I think about the men in my life, like Brian Hauswirth, one of the most egotistical people.
He is, isn't he?
Welcome into the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri.
But we have had a lot of, on both sides of the aisle that I can remember, going back even into the 90s, a lot of female legislators in Missouri. I think of Barbara Washington right now, who's a Mizzou graduate and attorney, former reporter at the Kansas City Star. She's a Democrat from Kansas City. She is, without question, one of the most knowledgeable members of the legislature, one of the most well-respected down there. If you talk to any Republican, I've never heard one of them say a bad word about her, yet she doesn't get a whole lot of press.
She's fantastic. I had an opportunity
to
meet her one evening, and it was actually a Republican lawmaker that said, you really need to meet her, and I was really impressed.
The governor and her get along very well.
And here's one of those females in politics we're talking about.
Watch people think it's okay.
That's Rashida
Tlaib. Come
I
on.
know, that's a pot shot. Rashida, and listen, it's not just Rashida Tlaib. She's saying that Israel should not be able to defend itself against attack. Headlines regarding this bombing of a hospital in Gaza. The New York Times. Brian Hansen, who's the star of the Gary Nolan Show, brought this to my attention yesterday. The New York Times, the Associated Press, these people running with this headline saying Israel bombs this hospital. How dare them? And it is simply not true. Dangerous and disheartening on the part of these national news outlets when they do this stuff. And now we're starting to see big donors at universities. One of the quotes was closing the checkbook. We're not doing it because you're refusing. You've got students at your school who are going out and they're saying anti-Semitic things, and you're just letting this stuff fly. Is that cancel culture? Because as a donor, if I'm donate, I should be able to yank my donation, keep my donation for whatever reason. There's even a local high school guy who helped pay for a local football field, and the school, they supported something, and I think it had to do with Black Lives Matter.
No, he said something, and they wanted to pull his name off the football field, and he sued and said, "No, I paid to put my name on that." But I don't think it's cancel culture. I think we've heard from Vivek Ramaswamy. He's like, "We're all stupid when we're 20. Like, you shouldn't be. You shouldn't."
Ouch.
Sorry. I mean, but you shouldn't have a lifetime of consequences for being misinformed or just being
a dumb kid.
Right. But I think, so we're also hearing that law firms are rescinding offers to certain graduates, Harvard, Columbia students, linked to these letters that they've pinned. And I think, if you're out of undergrad and you're expecting to enter a serious profession and you're doing these things, and your employer, I mean, they look at everything else. I mean, that's part of character and fitness is part of your examination before you're admitted to the bar. And I think your employer is entitled not only to look at your social media, but other public, because ultimately whatever you do is going to reflect back on them. And if that doesn't align with their values, then as a private entity, I feel like they've got the right to do that.
It's like the proverbial 10-foot pole and you're using it to push. Nope, we don't want you to have anything. The disgusting things that you are saying and that you believe in, we do not want anything to do with you. We don't want you to have anything to do with the good name of our firm, our business, whatever it is. 874-9390, coming up just a few minutes from now. By the way, so there's like 75% of the show here that has just bought or is in the market for a car. And there's some pretty substantial news regarding, and listen, you want to buy an electric vehicle? That's cool, great. But when the government, in effect, forces by trying to fund it by giving you tax breaks and forcing you to do this and forcing the automakers to do this, it causes problems. We're starting to see some of those problems, and they are real. One of the things we are covering this morning here on the show, and a brilliant idea from an airline when it comes to seating. This is one of those I'm like, why is it taking so long?
Duh.
Right? Coming up 5 minutes from now, we're going to be doing What's Hot with Hannah.
More fast food news, but this time you can bring it home on a Sunday.
We'll do that next.
in-laws.
God's chicken, Jesus chicken, you bet.
Yeah, and of course, Chick-fil-A is one of those restaurants that's closed on Sundays. And I always get really mad because Chick-fil-A never sounds good until it's Sunday.
100%.
And I can't go.
We want what we can't have.
Just like I always want to go to Hobby Lobby on Sunday, and it's also closed. But now there's a solution to this, and Chick-fil-A is actually the one serving up the solution. They have released a free online cookbook for some of their menu items, essentially. And anybody can go and download this cookbook and make some Chick-fil-A inspired dishes at home. So even if it is Sunday, you can potentially bring some Chick-fil-A home with you.
Is it the recipe, too? Like the recipe for their breading and what they use?
So it's Chick-fil-A inspired. So they're not out here just giving up the recipe to their current menu items. Now, a couple of the items in the cookbook are discontinued items from their menu. So there was a coleslaw recipe that people were devastated over when they discontinued the item. And Chick-fil-A actually released that recipe by itself and said, here you go for all you crybabies crying over coleslaw that we're not bringing back. Here you go. But also, if all you guys were in love with our coleslaw, we wouldn't have canceled it in the first place.
So can you buy the cookbook? No, it's free.
It's free.
Oh.
Yeah, it's part of a program that they're doing to bring awareness to food insecurity. And it's part of their Chick-fil-A's shared table program. And their restaurants are partnering with local organizations in the franchises towns to donate the leftover food at the end of the day to these organizations that help feed hungry people.
I think that would make a good stocking stuffer for your Chick-fil-A friend. I mean, I was thinking even if you had to buy it, that would be a fun gift.
Yeah.
What would impress me even more is if the Colonel would put his recipe online.
No
for
way.
those 11 secret herbs and spices.
Stephanie, did you see the disgruntled Starbucks employee recently that has gone viral on all of the social media platforms?
No.
They got fired from their job at Starbucks, and so what they did is they took pictures of all of the recipe cards for Starbucks, signature drinks, and they posted them on the internet and said, here's how you can make this at home.
Ouch. That is a lawsuit waiting to happen. Has anyone had the new Chick-fil-A, the one with the pimento cheese and the jalapenos? I think it's seasonal, and I really want to go try it, but I haven't had a chance.
I have not tried it. I am not a spicy food person, so
Chick-fil-A is not spicy.
It's got jalapenos on it.
Eh.
And that's what's hot. What's hot with Hannah? You know what else is hot? Is Hannah's wedding pictures on the Facebook page. And I don't mean I'm not.
That didn't sound right.
I say as soon as I said it, I'm like, no.
But
no.
I remember how wonderful how excited you were when you found your venue. And there's a lot of different really awesome venues in mid-Missouri. And oh my gosh, the background, the fall leaves and the hills and the valley, it is stunning.
A hidden gem in the middle of nowhere in Pilot Grove.
Hannah's posted some
700 announced just a day before. Ford also says it's reshuffling its top management as the UAW strike against the big three automakers drags on. The company maintains it's at the limit of what it can spend on higher wages and benefits, and going any farther, as demanded by the union, would hurt its ability to invest in its business.
It's affecting several automakers actually right now, and it's not just the strike. It is the move. It is almost the forced move. The government is forcing them to do this, forcing them to move to electric vehicles. We featured a story a while ago, Ford's Dearborn plant. They were cutting jobs because they're like, well, if we're being forced to transfer everything, because we've got to change our production lines, we've got to change everything in order to build electric vehicles because that's what the federal government is making us do. So we had to lay off people so we could facilitate those costs. And I don't think it's working out the way a lot of smart people thought it would work out. And we're starting to see that happen.
And people cannot be buying these cars. They just can't be. I mean, we're all kind of in the market for a new car. We've talked about that. But, I rode in a new EV when I was out in Las Vegas. I had never even seen this car before. Have you seen a Polestar before? Mm-mm. It's apparently...
Brandon probably has, but not cars.
Oh, yikes.
Nicely done.
Speaking of that, the EU...
I liked it.
That's pretty good.
Speaking
Points
of that...
tomorrow.
The EU officially banned glitter yesterday, I think. And I was like, what happens to all those folks? Anyway, but I saw this new car. It was really sleek and nice. And like the whole top was a sunroof or whatever. I don't know what you call it. It was all glass. It was really beautiful. And I thought, but it was kind of small, like compact. And I was thinking, that's kind of nice. I wonder how much those things cost. I looked it up, like brand new, $65,000 for like a compact car. And I thought, who would buy this?
Isn't that the one that's made in Sweden?
I don't know. They're really nice.
Yeah, I think it is.
I hate to be a party pooper, but those roofs on cars are usually not very safe.
That's exactly what I was also thinking.
So this is Wake Up Mid-Missouri. John, are you in the market for a car? You've been poking around looking to buy a car?
Always. I kind of joke about it, Just, if the right bargain would come along, sure.
Right. Hannah, are you in the market for a car? That's producer Hannah.
I am. I've been mooching off family members for a couple months.
Stephanie Bell.
I think I've officially purchased one as of last week.
You think?
I think.
Not sure
I
what's
wasn't
happening.
really involved, and I think I haven't. I still need to replace my other one.
I've heard the kids were telling me that, Mom, when you were out of town, Daddy bought a new car. My name is Branden Rathert. I am in the market for a car, and I'm saying this not so that people call and say, hey, what are you looking for? Because this has worked out very nicely, by the way, for producer Hannah and Stephanie Bell.
Well, it's the power of local radio, right?
That's right. As a matter of fact, I'm looking for a black Toyota 4Runner. Got to have the nice black wheels, moonroof, leather interior, preferably new, maybe gently used.
You're so bougie.
Right? It's just a small SUV. The car I have now is almost as old as you, so I'm like, well, if I'm getting a car, it's going to be what I want. It's going to be what I need, too. I got to have something with four-wheel drive, so whenever weather goes south here in mid-Missouri, I make sure that I get into the station and cover this stuff. So have you considered an electric car, Hannah?
Not seriously.
Marsh?
No. But, would never rule one out. It's like you've talked about. It's the price point on them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the husband and I have had conversations in the past about how if there were charging stations closer to where we live, it could potentially be a more feasible option just because I do have a commute every day. And so, we have had discussions, but nothing serious.
Did you guys consider electric?
No. They sent me 3 minivans, I think. One was $10,000 cheaper. I said, well, why is that so cheap? And they're like, well, it doesn't have the package on it, so there's no side sensors, no heated seat, no heated steering wheel. I'm like, I've never had any of that. So, like, for $10,000, I don't need it.
So there's a point to all this. There is one electric vehicle that I have considered.
Not seriously, in your dreams.
It's the new, it's the Hummer. But I won't buy it, and there's 2 reasons I won't buy it. Number 1, it's electric. Number 2,
it's $100,000.
$112,000.
So the Teslas are cheaper, and honestly, I've looked. I had some friends who ordered a Tesla, and I think they're way backed up. Like, I think if you want a new Tesla, the prices come down. But I think you're like 9 months. You have to order it, and it's and most people, in that I know that are like Hannah and I, where you drive it and then your car is like on its last leg and you don't have the luxury to sit around and wait for 9 months for a new car. When you need a new car, you need to get one pretty quickly.
My engine blew up.
Right.
Not literally, but it's going to the salvage yard. So I'm fortunate that I have parents who have extra cars that I can borrow.
For sure.
So it's interesting because people say, oh, they're more environmentally friendly. And you look at the facts regarding the mining, what it does to the earth, to mine the material, to make the batteries, the heavy equipment, and the gas, the diesel that the heavy equipment uses. All that stuff, they've completely debunked the idea that there's really any environmental benefit to them.
Well, they're harder on roads because they're heavier.
Yep. People are saying, hey, we have all these electric cars parked, let's say, Hit Street Garage or a parking garage in Jefferson City, because these things are infinitely heavier than these. So we're not if you want to buy an electric car, not knocking that. But here's the problem.
But we are.
Well, the problem is when the government is forcing you. They're funneling people. They want you to do this. By George, you're going to do it. Ford, cutting F-150 Lightning factory shift. They're saying it's emblematic of the changing electric vehicle demand. Ford confirming that it's temporarily cut a shift at its F-150 Lightning electric pickup plant in Detroit, signaling demand is drying up for that highly rated electric vehicle. Additionally, General Motors told us earlier this week delaying production of all electric trucks at a Michigan plant by at least a year or two. And here's what they're saying: to better manage capital investments.
I know some of the smaller dealerships even have the option of exercise the option of not buying all the service equipment that they need for electric vehicles.
Because I think people are just going, hey, this is fine. I would like to buy one, but the government forcing me to do it. And so now we're seeing the problems. And there's people that have talked about this. Randy Tobler, host of the Tobler Show, he's been talking about this for a long time. When the government starts getting involved and telling you should buy this, and they're relying on really a lot of BS science. Well, they're friendlier on the environment in the long haul. They're not. They're just simply not. And now we're starting to see these companies going, man, people aren't buying these. We better pull back.
It's like when you're a kid and you're thinking about cleaning your room because you notice it's a little messy. You're planning on it, and then your parents tell you, hey, you need to clean your room, and all of a sudden your motivation and your want to clean your room just out the window.
Amen. Sometimes, do you ever have an idea?
It has to be my idea,
So I've had an idea for a lot of years, and I always think, well...
You can't share that one on air.
Okay, so I've had this other idea for a lot of years. Every time I fly out to Idaho, as a matter of fact, I'm flying out next week. Go see the grandkids in Idaho for a few days. But every time I get on a plane in the boarding process, I'm like, it's the worst part of the flight.
I hate it.
Yep. Why don't they, in the way they do it, it's convoluted at times, but why don't they seat everybody in the window seats first? I've always thought, what a great idea. And then I stop and think, well, I guess people in the know better than me. What a dumb idea. Apparently not.
No, United is starting to do that for their boarding, and so they're somehow changing their groups to try to seat window seats first. Now, also, why aren't you putting people who sit in the back first as well?
Yes.
Right? And I don't understand plane boarding at all. Someone smarter than me is going to have to explain it. But like the fact of, you have higher status or you're first class, guess what? You get to get on first. Like that is the opposite of what I want to do. I don't want to sit on the plane for an extra 30 minutes. Like my ideal is like walk on the plane and 10 minutes later take off. Like that's what I want to do.
Are you complaining about flying first class?
No, I'm not. And usually I don't get to, but in the occasion that I get, a complimentary
occasions,
upgrade.
Plural.
They're like, guess what? You get to board first. No, I don't want to board first. I want to board last. But I also don't want to miss my plane. So I don't understand plane boarding. I also heard there was a study out, I guess, that tracked all of this and did this. And it's not really about boarding the window seats first. That's not necessarily this is really mean. Is not necessarily going to speed the process up. It's really about separating slow people from fast people.
And then the question that falls into it too is if you're seating the window seat people first, and let's say you have a family of 3 who wants to sit together, does the kid get to go on and sit in the window seat, or how do you do it?
That's a good point. And I think it just, people need to pay better attention. I think that's the thing, because I fly a lot, and I still do never understand how people are sitting in the wrong seat. And like suddenly someone comes up, they're like, "You're in my seat." And I'm like, it literally it says it on your, like, can you count or read? Like, come on. And so I really think there's got to be a better way.
This is a true story. Last time I flew a couple months ago, because, like you go to, like, Faroe Field, going to be packed, sold-out game right after Stephanie and I get done emceeing the homecoming parade there by City Hall downtown. Please come by, say hello. Stadium's going to be packed. You go to Busch Stadium, you go to Arrowhead Stadium. They have ushers, and you show them your ticket. And if you don't know where your seats are, you've never been there, you show them your tickets, and they will gladly walk you to your seats. I was stunned when I flew a couple of months ago. I'm not kidding. This lovely old lady, and this was in Dallas, making the switch from Dallas to Boise. She gets on, and I'm right behind her. Stereotypical old lady, a couple bags in her hands, maybe hunched over a little bit, one of them little old stocking caps, maybe a lacy piece of net over it. And she says, and she shows them her ticket, paper ticket, not on her phone.
I like my paper ticket now. Come on.
She says, "Can you show me where my seat is?" And I wanted to say, lady, this is not a stadium, man. But the kind flight attendant.
I flew out, I think the day after it was at the LSU game. I flew out, and you would be shocked at the number of LSU people that are flying out of COU. Those Mizzou games are really bringing a lot of people into the airport and, just mid-Missouri.
2 sellouts.
Oh, yeah.
This year. And not talking Kevin McCarthy either. 2 sellouts at Faroe.
I love the
well done.
No, I love when we get to this time, because everyone's like, by the way, does anyone have some extra tickets for this weekend? And everyone's like, no. And I guess, what is it? What's the game next weekend? Is it Tennessee? Anyway.
Yay,
yeah.
sports.
Anyway, I hear tickets are very hard to come by.
Hard to come by, and you're right. More people coming into town. These folks want to see the 6-1 Mizzou Tigers, and more good news. Negotiations underway for our food service at Columbia Regional Airport. We're very appreciative of the rice cakes that the local company has provided.
As long as you get the right flavor. I'm serious. No ranch. Don't give me why would they put the cheddar ones on? Then everyone's getting on the plane with like Cheeto fingers. No, thank you.
That would be all except for this.
Apples, cinnamon apple.
It's coming up 5 minutes from now.
I know. I'm just saying, if you're listening, Quaker.
Can you bail us out, John?
Please.
Don't they have peanut butter ones?
No.
All right, what do you got, John?
Coming up?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got that right here.
All right, that's next.
Slow the heck
breaks out in the Middle East. The Dow down 332 points, accelerating into the close. The S&P off by 58. The Nasdaq falling 219.
Stephanie's going to be looking at your futures for you coming up 8:25 in the Morning Bell. Business news with a little twist.
We've got some business news leftovers today and some price increases maybe coming your way.
And that would be all, except for this.
Connor Cato was speeding home on a Georgia freeway last month, got pulled over doing 90 in a 55 in Savannah. So Cato said, yeah, I expected a big fine, but in the mail, I got a speeding ticket for $1.4 million. So he called the courthouse in Chatham County, Georgia, and he said, this has got to be a typo. And the lady said, no, sir, you either pay the amount of the ticket or come to court December 21st at 1:30 p.m. He said he did a little sniffing around. The figure is a placeholder number, and the judge would be able to set a different fine during the court appearance. So it turns out the programmers who designed the software used the largest number possible because what they call super speeders are a mandatory court appearance and don't have a fine amount attached to it. So the base fine in Savannah, Georgia, for being a super speeder, $999,999 plus court costs. But the guy was told the new fine won't exceed $1,000. So slow down in Savannah if you don't want to know the rest of that story.
That's still a lot.
Yes.
I think we have an expert among us on high dollar speeding tickets, don't we, Mr. Rathert?
We do.
And who would that be?
Not it. I've heard one of the things I've heard, and how fast over the speed limit was the guy going?
He was going 90 and 55, so he was booking right along, and it said the cutoff was 35 over.
I got tagged
to be a
in
super speeder.
Green River or Sweet Springs, Wyoming, coming back from a wedding in Colorado Springs, going back. I got tagged doing 140 in an 85 mile an hour speed limit.
What were you driving?
Mitsubishi Eclipse Turbo, horse and carriage.
Was it electric?
It was not.
I wasn't
electric.
going that fast when I got mine.
And got out of the ticket because poor wife feigned a medical emergency. Anyhow, but one of the things I've heard to get out of a speeding ticket, not a speeding ticket where you're way over, but to get out of a speeding ticket is to go ahead and schedule a court appearance because apparently, and I don't know all of it, just what I heard. Speaking out my rear end here.
Legal advice from Branden Rathert.
I'm not an attorney. I just have experience with some of these things. But apparently, go ahead and say, I want a court date on this. I want to fight it in court because apparently you have to have a witness and the officer, whoever issued the speeding ticket, has to show up. And more often than not, and one of the things you can do is find out, hey, are they off on this day? You can schedule your court for the day they're off. I don't know if it's true anymore, but there was a dude who wrote a book who was a guest on our show years ago. Go to court because more often than not, especially if it's somebody in law enforcement, it's their day off. They don't want to take a day off.
I don't know, 90 miles an hour and a 55. They might make an example of you. I think it was the same guy who, back in the radar detector era, said put the little balls of aluminum foil in your hubcaps and it'll foil the radar gun.
Ah.
Is that true? Or are you pulling my leg, bud?
It didn't work, but the guy said, give her a try.
By the way, while we're kind of still stuck on the thing of vehicles, we were talking about Ford and now GM. They're not cutting back production of electric vehicles. They're cutting back what they're doing with their electric vehicle factories. Both of the automakers.
votes.
And what you wind up with is just another episode of monkeys getting amorous with football starring the House Republicans.
All right, well, good times. Joining me now, Republican Congressman from Florida, Carlos Jimenez.
Nicely done. Expectations are Jim Jordan would get even fewer votes today. There's that. So we still don't have a Speaker of the House. And, John, kind of an interesting story about the Missouri Speaker of the House. Dean Plocker was on our show recently. He's actually going to be running for lieutenant governor. This is something that's been out there for a while. What's the story with the Missouri Speaker of the House?
Yeah, Dean Plocker this week apparently fired his chief of staff, Kenny Ross, for folks at the Missouri State Capitol. He's been chief of staff for the last 3 Republican House speakers, and Todd Richardson, Elijah Harr, and Rob Vescovo. And it comes in the wake of some allegations that have been floating around from the chief clerk of the Missouri House about what were termed kind of potentially illegal and unethical conduct by Plocker, because he was the one wanting the House to spend, I don't know, like $750,000-$800,000 to hire a private firm to manage constituent information. So there's some things rolling around there. Kenny Ross, we understand, is now working for Caleb Rowden.
And looking at races, incidentally, if you get the most money, does that mean when it comes to campaign finances, talking about Missouri candidates for Missouri statewide office, we're talking here close to home, does that mean you win?
Not necessarily.
Sure doesn't hurt, does it?
If you have the least amount of money, it probably means you're going to lose.
Is anybody so in the race for governor right now? Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe, basically, he leads when it comes to money there. As a matter of fact, Bill Eigelskamp reached out and said, "Hey, campaign finance reports are out. Can we come on the show?" And I said, "Well, let me run it by the other members on the show, and we'll see."
Is that what you're doing now?
Yeah, kind of.
And here's the other thing about the fundraising, and I'm fine having him on, to be honest, but any of them that are running. But it depends on what they want to talk about. But go ahead. You want?
Yeah. Well, I was going to say, here's the challenge. We're a year away from the election.
That's true.
And it's tough because and people sure, and we've had each, and some of them, you know, when you're in a news-making position, for example, Mike Kehoe, he's lieutenant governor, he's in a news-making position. As a matter of fact, we're talking about Buy Missouri Week, which is happening right now, and you have these people on and then trying to discern, okay, is this a campaign for governor or is this your role as lieutenant governor? And then you have somebody like Bill Eigel, and I like his political mindset, I like his conservative values. And we have lawmakers on from out of district on a regular basis. As a matter of fact, I find it interesting to have these people on. But when people keep wanting to come on, like, it's October of 2023, we got a ways to go.
And I understand. Yeah, and I will respect, and you do a great job handling that. I just want to make one very quick point about the fundraising. And I look at it. I don't make a big deal out of it in news, but Stephanie, I've made this point before over and over. Regardless of those fundraising numbers, if you didn't know anything about those fundraising numbers, if you look at tweets and you look at the response on Moledge Twitter, you'd think Crystal Quaid and the Democrats have a supermajority in Jefferson City. I mean, it's the same group that is, they have a huge following, and any Republican that puts out a tweet, it makes it sound like our state is three-fourths Democratic. If you look at a Twitter, it's just the opposite. Missouri has a supermajority. But it is interesting on Twitter how that makes it look like that.
Well, that and Bill Eigel, I mean, he is super active on Twitter. He is constantly tweeting almost like he is a Democrat. I mean, he's on there just as much as them. I would say, Jay Ashcroft is visiting every county in Missouri. He's probably in rural counties during the day doing his work, not able to get on the Twitter and perhaps not even having cell phone access. Similarly, Mike Kehoe has been at every event in the last 6 months visiting real working people. Yep. And so unlike Democrats, our conservative leaders are out there meeting with citizens, community leaders, business leaders, getting the work of the people done rather than sitting trolling behind a computer. And so I would say that's why Missouri Twitter is taken over. It looks heavy on the Democrats because the Republicans are out there working hard.
Yeah, and again, like I said, you'd never know it looking at Twitter, but that is interesting. Kehoe, by the way, was just in Columbia. I know he's been in Jefferson City, and you're right, all over the state. Kehoe was just at the Columbia Sheltered Workshop Friday. I interviewed him there.
I think back to the Missouri GOP Senate primary with Greitens and all those guys, and you talk about money being spent. There was that one, the Show Me Values PAC, that was the one with Rex Sinkfield and all them involved. And they came up with, gosh, what was it, $6-7 million to go directly after Greitens to make sure he wouldn't win the primary.
But in 2016, you're right, and that's a great point. But in 2016, no one thought Eric Greitens was going to win that primary. I mean, it was either going to be although Bruner was pretty strong, but it was either going to be Hanaway.
That's a good point. Who is this guy and where did he come from?
Well, and he in those ads attacked Peter Kinder, but the perception was that it was going to be either Hanaway or Kinder, and Chris Koster came darn near close to being elected governor in this state.
Sure did.
Chris Koster did. And quite frankly, he is way more conservative than the Democrats left in the legislature right now. Been very interesting.
He also had all the trial lawyer money.
He did.
I mean, he
flipped parties.
But he also had the backing of the Missouri Farm Bureau.
He did.
Jaws dropped in the room when I was at the Farm Bureau when they had endorsed him. But Donald Trump, 19-plus points. He carried a lot of Republicans over the top. Senator Blunt has a lot. I mean, Senator Blunt campaigned hard, but he can thank Donald J. Trump for 2016 because Kander and Koster did very well. I believe they were at 49 and 48% respectively.
They really did. And the thing, I'd like to say, the more money always wins out, Brandon. The race that sits in my mind where I'm like, the general rule could be broken is the Galloway-McDowell race from 2018. And if you were, Brian laughed, if you recall, Galloway out fundraised McDowell 50-1. And she almost won. Mm-hmm. Sandra McDowell almost won. And I think that's maybe the Trump factor still lingering. I don't know.
Completely forgot to tell you all this yesterday. Guess who I ran into at Hy-Vee off of Conley Road in Columbia? Nicole Galloway, former state auditor. Yeah,
awesome.
She was with the little kids, just buying, celery and milk and stuff. And I'm like, Nicole,
you're bothering former elected officials at the grocery store.
I did.
This is why Travis Kelce has to buy a private mansion. People like you.
There it is.
And one thing about her, she put up a formidable campaign against Governor Parson in 2020. But again, Missouri is a bright red state. At least it is right now. And she I thought ran a really good campaign. She was very good at speaking. I interviewed her, but just. This state it's ruby red. Maybe it'll change. We'll see. But right now, all the numbers show very, very strong numbers for Republicans.
The other thing I wonder here, we're talking about this campaign finance reports, and you look at the current. Let's see, the folks that lead in money. Let's see, Dean Plocker, I think right now has more than Rader. State Treasurer Vivek Malik, the incumbent, has more money than his opponent. The incumbent Attorney General Andrew Bailey has more money. And we sit here and talk about this, but I wonder, does that matter to if I'm a voter, just Joe Schmo, and I'm a plumber or I'm an accountant somewhere, is that something as a voter that I'm paying attention to? And I don't know because I'm too in it.
You will be paying attention. And the reason why money matters, and we're a little bit self-interested here, in that money buys media. And for a lot of these people, like Dean Plocker, like Holly Rader, they are very well known in their counties, in their areas, but they are not well known statewide. And so in order to become well known, they will then make large media purchases. A lot of this budget will go to TV, radio, whatever, to try to even just introduce themselves to other citizens from around the state. And so right now, you hear these numbers, but we all get to that point late in the cycle where it's like, if I hear one more person asking for my vote or get one more mailer, right? Or one, that's how this money is going to get spent. And so eventually, how well you might know these candidates, how well they might be able to, and their PACs obviously, spend against each other and get into these, run negative ads. All of that really comes down to dollars and cents.
I agree with that. A lot of it will end up too in television, radio. A lot of it will end up in rural radio. Rural radio and our station, quite frankly, our stations, people listen and they vote. And they generally, I would say most of our listeners probably vote in the Republican primary would be my gut feeling.
And if you're listening to Wake Up Mid-Missouri right now, and if you're a business owner, that's something to think about. You're not the only one listening. I'm not a salesperson or anything.
He just plays one on the radio.
But that's why I would encourage you to call Zimmer. Radio works. And I don't know who said, as far as marketing your business, that's people say, well, I don't want to spend the money. No, it's an investment. And believe me, it works. Ask anybody who you hear on this radio station.
It works.
Ask them. And they're like, yeah. What was it? And I know some people are like, well, times are tight. I got to pull back on marketing to save money. I don't know who said it, but somebody said pulling back on marketing to save money is like trying to stop a watch to save time. It doesn't work. Welcome to the show. It's Wake Up Mid-Missouri. Producer Hannah has pictures of her wedding posted on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page. Beautiful.
I do.
Yeah, it's very nice. So earlier when I said I want to correct two things that I've said this morning. I said, here's what else is hot with Hannah, the pictures of Hannah's wedding. I didn't mean to imply that Hannah was hot, nor did I mean to not imply that she's not hot.
It's one of those, just leave it alone. You're making it worse.
Because what I was trying to say is everybody is looking at them based on the comments and reactions, so you can see that.
Did you see who commented on it?
I did.
Oh, can we cover that at 8:35?
Sure.
All right. Well, because we've also got some interesting texts regarding getting out of speeding tickets. And I got a personal text from somebody in law enforcement. I'd said, and I prefaced it, I thought enough by saying, well, I'd heard or read a book years ago. There's a guy who wrote a book, How to Get Out of a Speeding Ticket. One of the things he suggested was, go ahead and ask for the court appearance, because apparently the law enforcement officer who gave you the ticket has to show up, and a lot of times they will not show up to court. They want to go to court, especially if it happens to be their day off.
We've got Sheriff Wheeler coming up in the next segment, don't we? He's calling in to give us some tips and tricks.
So I had somebody from local law enforcement saying a two-word text after I said that. The two words in that text, we'll cover that. Coming up at 8:35 here on Wake Up.
So while that might be good news, we have some bad news coming your way as far as your regular subscriptions. Now, Netflix had good news. Their stock price soared. They added like 8.5 million subscribers. When they cracked down on the passwords, people were like, I'm just going to cancel Netflix. What did they do? No, they bought their own account.
I'm going to quit watching the NFL because of Colin Kaepernick.
No, they still purchased Netflix. So they added, 8 I don't know how many users, 8.8 million subscribers, 8.54 billion for their third quarter revenue. So the numbers are very similar there. So a good time, but they said, hey, thanks for subscribing. Guess what? We're going to raise the prices. So despite adding all these extra users, which you would think, hey, if more people are on the platform, then everyone gets a break, right? Like we should get a discount. Nope, they're going from $10 to $12 for the basic plan, $20 to $23 for the premium plan. Of course, you can still do the ad-supported plan at $7 a month.
That's harsh. That's almost mean.
You're like, we did the right thing. We stopped sharing passwords. We played by the rules. We signed up.
So I'm halfway guilty of this. So, of course, I got booted off my parents' Netflix account that we were using because they cracked down on password sharing. So one day when we went to pull up Netflix on our smart TV, there was this lovely little message saying, it doesn't appear that you're on your home's Wi-Fi. Are you traveling? Or basically, should you get the heck off this Netflix account?
Just curious.
Yeah, so I the husband and I had to start our own Netflix account. And we feel like real adults now.
May I ask
and
you
then
something?
they said, are you paying your student loan yet?
Right.
I actually did just cancel a different streaming service because they raised the price again, and I got mad about it.
Yeah, well, that's not the only thing that you're going to get an increase for. This might be coming to you if you're not already paying for the verified badge on Twitter, which I think is like $11 a month. Twitter is still free, or X, sorry. The platform formerly known as Twitter is still free in the U.S., but Elon is announcing, hey, for new users, and right now they're rolling it out in New Zealand and the Philippines, basically to even use Twitter, you're going to have to pay $1 a month. I think people will say yes. I don't think people are going to not use Twitter.
You're probably doing it with Netflix. I mean...
Yeah. And $1 a month just seems like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Where can we find you on Twitter?
Stephanie S. Bell.
Hannah?
Producer_Hannah.
Marsh?
KWS News.
And mine is...
Let's check.
At...
It's literally your name.
But it's backwards. It's transposed. At Rathert Branden.
Would you pay $1 for Twitter?
No.
I think I'm still paying for the $11 verified thing. I just it's like I turned it on and then to see what it was about. I think I haven't turned it off.
And that's the morning bell.
Wait, one more thing though. Also, LinkedIn is cutting. We didn't get to this yesterday. Cutting 650 jobs, which is funny because LinkedIn is where you go to get a job, right?
Not always.
A lot of times. But this we've asked this question before, is AI going to take our jobs? And LinkedIn is basically saying yes, that they've cut these positions because they are focusing on artificial intelligence, and that they have an AI tool that's going to help recruiters and all this other stuff. So pretty crazy.
So they're starting to see some of the effects. He didn't know his mic was on. And he called one of the lawmakers a dummy. And he addressed that yesterday, and he's owning it, man.
My 7th hour of broadcasting, my last words were dumbass. Those were the words that were being carried everywhere. Everyone's like, wow, your mic was open. Your mic was open. My mic was open for 6 hours and 58 minutes. Nobody cared what I said. But I say one word on an off-mic moment, and everyone's like, wow.
And we are all, I'll speak for myself, and then I'll defer to Stephanie and Mr. Marsh and producer Hannah. He's pretty accurate, isn't he? Well, 3.5 hours, it's all good. And then all of a sudden, one little thing that triggers somebody, and boy, do we hear about it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Representative Tolson Reich.
Oh, yeah.
What'd she say?
Oh,
you weren't here that
Now, hold up.
right. I forgot about that.
Huh.
Were you here when that happened?
I don't believe so.
Oh,
we
wow.
were.
What did you do?
Ooh. We'll get
turned
Brian.
very pale.
Brian, were you in the studio? You remember Cherie Tolson Reich when she was on the show and we had to hit the bleep/dump button last week? Do you remember? You may not have been in the studio at that moment in time.
I don't remember I remember it was very entertaining, but I don't remember that part.
Oh, it was entertaining. It was incredible, actually.
It was on the backside of my "that would be all except for this" feature.
Yeah, you guys conveniently didn't share that one with me when I asked what I missed while I was out.
Completely forgot about it because
you just tried to move right on after that one.
Yeah. You can go to the Wake Up Mid-Missouri podcast on demand anytime, all the time, 939theeagle.com, KWS.com. And I think it was a 7 o'clock hour from last Thursday's show, or maybe Wednesday's show. Check it out. Actually, can't hear it because we caught it in time.
Well, and people regularly ask, how come if I'm watching the video feed, I can't see you in the breaks? There's a reason Hannah turns the mics off on us.
Also, you can hear it on the Facebook video.
What?
Yeah, the dump button doesn't work for the online streams.
No, during commercial breaks.
Did you hear me just have a panic attack?
Yeah, all of a sudden we're all freaking out. Wait, you can hear us during the commercial breaks? That's why you should go. And so what happened with state representative and elected? She's been elected, 4 times to office?
Oh,
she's been elected fourth final term.
Yeah, because she elected in 2016.
Yeah, and what she said. So I guess you could actually go and watch the video from last Thursday's show.
So normally you can't hear what's going on the video feed, but every once in a while I forget to turn my microphone off in commercial breaks. And I'm a little concerned when I was making fun of Rathert earlier, going, I gotta pee. I think my mic was on in a break.
I'm 52, and I drink a lot of water here in the morning, and when I get a chance, because our commercial breaks are so short, every chance I'm like, okay, I think I can.
Well, the problem lies in the fact that you will sit there for a couple minutes, twiddling your thumbs, and then when you only have 30 seconds left, that's when you decide you absolutely have to pee right then.
Absolutely.
Hannah, how much time do I have left? Am I going to be able to make this? Am I going to be able to do this? Welcome into the show. So Stephanie Bell, Brian Hauswirth is here.
I've got something I want to say in a moment, if I
Uh-oh.
may. And nothing bad, just something.
No dump button.
This is the 30th anniversary of my first full-time day in radio. Carrollton, Missouri, KMZU Radio, 1993. And I was Mike Carter and Miles Carter, and I get choked up talking about it. They gave me a first chance for 30 years ago today. I was in training and literally trying to learn. I was 21 years old, 21 or 22, and learning the equipment. I was a typewriter, believe it or not, at the time. Reel to reel. I mean, it was old. Carts. You remember? Yeah. Brandon knows.
Oh, yeah.
If you're radio, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I'm in training maybe an hour, and Ray Copeland dies. Ray Copeland, at the time, if people don't know, you could Google him. He was maybe the most notorious serial killer in Missouri. I would argue in rural Missouri history. He would kill transients up in northwest Missouri, but he died while I was being trained. So my training went out the window, and I was put on that story, and that's where I learned to cover the courts. That was a terrible, terrible case. He was prosecuted, by the way, by a guy here in Columbia, Kenny Holsoff. But I definitely remember that 30 years ago.
So was his wife, correct?
Oh,
right?
yes. They were both on death row at one time.
I have a question. So you said if you don't know who he is, Google him. But at the time you were doing this work, you would not have had access to the Google.
Correct.
So did you have like a set of like Encyclopedia Britannicas or something? How did you?
I knew it because I grew up in St. Louis, and his case. And you're right, and it was covered in the Wire. But I knew everything about it because the case had been on 60 Minutes. I was a news junkie. I would. It was my mission to watch football and Ed Bradley on Sunday night, 60 Minutes. Ed Bradley was in Chillicothe for the trial, and I had watched the coverage. Dick Ford in St. Louis actually went up there and covered it, so I knew most about it. To this day, I regret because listeners told me at the time there were other bodies buried up there, but we'll never know. We'll never know. But it was horrible. But 30 years ago today, I started full-time in radio. What a terrible case to cover on the first day, though.
And that was the beginning of Brian Hauswirth becoming his own walking encyclopedia. That makes so much sense.
Between Marsh and Brian Hauswirth, I have a feeling, Brian, because you know everything. I have a feeling I could ask you, what's the secret 11 herbs and spices that go into Kentucky Fried Chicken?
I don't think it'd be
I have a feeling you would know. Stephanie, you remember your very first day in radio?
Yeah. I think I asked you, I was like, I don't know how to push any of the buttons. And you said, that's okay. You don't need to push any buttons.
Yep.
Meanwhile, I looked at my board and said, wow, that's a lot of buttons, and I have to push all of them.
Hannah, you would think Hannah is like a pilot in a 737 with what she handles in her stuff. True story. I was working on an oldies station in a cornfield in northern Indiana, tucked away between Indianapolis, Indiana, and Chicago. And I also had to do sales.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh,
so I did news in the morning.
Yeah.
Then I went to the town square in Delphi, Indiana, and passed out a little newsletter that I put together every day. And then I sold during the day, and then I was on the air at night. And we had a GM, Bill Dybel. He was the guy that would always go, I'm going to be very honest with you. And when he said, I'm going to be very honest with you, guess what he was getting ready to do?
All lies.
Yep.
Wow.
And he comes in, and I'm getting ready to do my first professional break in radio, and I'm coming out of, some oldies song, and I'm sitting there, and I've got my finger on the microphone button like a minute before the song ends, and I'm prepping everything that I'm going to say. This is Brendan Taylor from WNJY, Joy. And he's standing behind me going, what do you want on your business cards for sales? Because they wanted me to use a stage name. And I'm like, my name's Rathert. I'm not using a stage name for two reasons. Number one, I'm very proud of the Rathert name. The other thing, it's Delphi, Indiana, man. I don't need a stage name, dude. I'm good.
Sure.
And so finally, as soon as the song ends, he walks out, and of course, my first, this is Brendan Taylor, the WNJ. That was in the Israelites, and I just completely butcher it.
Oh.
And there's a guy standing behind me. His name is Mike, and he's standing behind me. And as soon as I then go to commercial break, I turn around and I said, referring to the GM who caused me to do this, I said, why that? Does he do that? And the guy training me does this. He goes, shh, turn your mic off.
Ouch.
Oh, wow.
We just got a really cool text from Brenda at 874-9390. She says, I remember hearing Brian on the radio when I would go visit my grandparents in Carrollton.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. So that would have been, Brenda would have been 1993, 94, 95. I did news.
So that makes Brenda, how old is Brenda then?
No.
But someone who obviously, we'll say she's seasoned, let's say. But I think that's great. I think that's great. But I definitely I appreciate that. Delphi, isn't that the town?
Yeah.
God, that terrible case. A small town oh, God, what
listen,
a terrible
here's how
case.
small this town was. This is a slick move. We'll do some mailbag stuff coming up in leftovers because we do have some interesting suggestions on how to avoid a speeding ticket. And a statewide elected official is responding to Hannah's Facebook post.
Yes,
I do want to get to
saw that. Yes.
But this town on Wednesdays, all of the business, and there's a town square, courthouse right in the middle. I mean, it is an idyllic conservative American town. And on Wednesdays, all the businesses closed at noon. That's just what they did. And you would ask a lot of people, well, why do you do that? I don't know. It's just the way we've always done it.
Happy hour.
Well, the golf eventually.
Yeah.
But the story was apparently there was some ruthless, intelligent, but ruthless business owner who was in the chamber there. We're talking like 20s or 30s. And he would start convincing all these, especially competitors, hey, you know what we should do? We're all friends. We should, just start on Wednesdays. We'll close at noon, spend time with family, go do community stuff. And it caught on. It became a big thing. And then as soon as everybody was on board, he quit closing at noon, and he stayed open till 5 o'clock. He was the only business open in town, Delphi, Indiana. Coming up 5 minutes from now,
were you able to sell him time? Were you?
We're gonna do some leftovers, some things in the mailbag.
Serving leftovers. Enjoy.
So it wasn't some advice. I was relaying something. Well, I heard this way to get out of a speeding ticket. One of the things you do is go ahead and try to show up for court. Say, yeah, I want the court date, because oftentimes the law enforcement officer won't show up, especially if it happens to be on their day off. They don't want to spend their day off coming to court, find your traffic ticket. And we had somebody in law enforcement locally said 2 words in this text when he heard us say that on the air. 2 words he texted: bad idea.
He said, you heard wrong.
Kelly via text says, my daughter kills the officer with kindness to avoid tickets and always claims to have Jesus on her side. One day he's going to humble her.
When I got pulled over the last time, I was in my mom's car and the passenger side window doesn't roll down. So it was so embarrassing. I had to roll down the back seat window, turn around in my seat and say, sorry, officer, that window doesn't roll down.
Also in leftovers, John, you got anything for leftovers?
Yeah, we heard from Cole County Sheriff John Wheeler, since you were name checking him. He said, I heard you guys talking about me on the radio. My advice, don't break the law, and you won't get a speeding ticket.
Yeah,
perfect.
His Cole County officers, they're good.
Hannah knows.
They're diligent, right?
Yep.
She's talking.
To which we responded, LOL, or be faster than the cop.
I mentioned this briefly earlier, but I just can't stop thinking about it. The EU, Europe, has officially banned the sale of loose glitter. And I can't decide, do I like this or not? I mean, I don't like the government controlling my life, but glitter really is a menace.
Which is worse, government control or glitter? My goodness.
They say it contains harmful microbeads, and it's part of their plan to cut environmentally harmful microplastic by 30%. Did you ever think glitter was harmful?
There's all these smart scientists sitting in a room somewhere brainstorming ways to cut down on global warming. And the best they could come up with was glitter.
No more glitter.
Dozens of 7-year-old girls crying their eyes out over glitter-free birthday parties now.
And dancers.
We were talking about electric vehicles. If you want to buy an electric vehicle, I don't care, but I don't like when the government says you're going to buy an electric vehicle. Ford and GM scaling back production because they're saying right now there's just no demand. We got a text from a guy who locally works at a car dealership, says, yeah, we have a lot on the lot right now. Can't get rid of them. And then the other thing, Steve says, I guess my questions on electric vehicles is about longevity. Rechargeable batteries have a finite lifespan. How long do they last? How much to replace them when they wear out? And I think more and more people are going, hey, this isn't really that good of a diet. And if you're buying them for you use less gas. And these people apparently don't have an understanding of how much diesel and other stuff is used to mine the earth from the minerals and the stuff you need to make the batteries.
Also, I know we've been making a lot of requests today about cars and other things, but I have a request for our friends at the Department of Revenue who I know listen. So earlier I said, who's really keeping their gas receipts anymore? I feel like people did it in the beginning and that they are, probably not doing it anymore. And you all humbled me and said, oh no, we are that petty. I'm going to get every penny back. I am still keeping my receipts. We got tons of texts from you all that said, yes, I'm going to recoup every dime. And I wonder, does the Department of Revenue, when they get those forms back in, do they track it by county? Because I would love to know what the pettiest county in Missouri
Pettis
is.
County.
I think they should.
Pettis County.
There you go. I think somebody should get a trophy for this of hey, you won the highest percentage of citizens that turned in the gas tax receipts. I think Mid-Missouri would probably win.
I love that idea. And then Hannah has posted pictures of her wedding on the Wake Up Mid-Missouri Facebook page, so you can see the latest addition to the Wake Up Mid-Missouri family. Is it as odd for you to say my husband now instead of my fiance as it is odd for me to hear you say my husband? And I don't mean odd, but
I keep saying fiance. It's I just got used to saying fiance instead of boyfriend, and now I just got to switch up again. Saying husband is a little jarring for just a second. Oh yeah, I have one of those now.
And Brandon has a problem hearing that word because he's been having a girlfriend for a while now, and he still has trouble saying the word.
I heard she really enjoyed the wedding, by the way.
What is it the chicks get whenever they go to a wedding? Wedding fever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a thing. I experienced the same thing.
It is a real thing. It's a real thing. So with her wedding pictures, Hannah has, I had never experienced that before. A statewide politician even commenting on producer Hannah's wedding photos.
Any guesses real quick?
Yep.
Lieutenant Governor Mike Kehoe commented and left a nice message of congratulations. So
How about that? Did he explain why he wasn't at the wedding?
he's a busy guy. Come on.
But he was invited, John.
He was.
He's running for something, isn't he?
He's running for governor.
And I know in his family they have a wedding coming up, so they're extra busy on top of his campaign stuff. So I do not blame the guy.
Yeah, but it was cool that seriously, anytime folks take part in what's happening here on Wake Up Mid-Missouri, we do appreciate those kind of things. It's really cool. All right, anybody else got any?
Tom says he got $56 this year.
Back on the gas tax.
Oh, yeah. Lots of people are saying that they're getting their money's worth.
Yeah, and it's, why not? It's the principle of the thing.
There it is. Taking another shot.
Like Matt Gaetz, it's the principle of